Please welcome this evening's guest moderator, director of the New York Film Festival, Kent Jones, and tonight's guests, Wes Anderson, Ralph Fiennes, and Tony Revolori.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks very much.
I want to start by talking about how this movie came to be at the end of the film, and I'm sure that most of the people in the room have not seen the film yet, but it's not giving anything away about the movie to say that at the end of the film you say there's a card that says that it's inspired by the writings of the writer Stefan Zweig. And I know that there's another story that inspired the movie, so I thought that that would be a good place to start.
Okay, yeah, and another story?
Isn't there another story of a true story that was
Well, there's a guy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. The character played by Ralph is called Monsieur Gustave, and he was originally inspired by a mutual. I wrote the script with my friend Hugo, and our mutual friend is the model who Ralph in fact knows as well for some years. Although I will say, that was the beginning of the character, and then I had this thought to kind of put it in a context like a Stefan Zweig story. This writer who I had started reading a few years ago, who I just fell in love with his stories and his memoir, and so those things got merged together. And then, and then Ralph took over, and it's so. In the end, I'm almost reluctant to say it's that the model is our friend, but he was the first model.
Mm-hmm. And just for cinephiles out there, Stefan Zweig wrote the novella "The Letter from an Unknown Woman" by Max Ophuls is based on. And, yeah.
Yes, and the first one I read is a book called Beware of Pity, which is his one big novel, his one real novel, and I love this book, and also his memoir, The World of Yesterday, is sort of inspired a lot of things in the movie, even though in the end the movie's probably not really anything like one of his stories. It still draws on a lot of things from his work, I guess. And
so you said a minute ago, and then I turned it over to Ralph. So I wonder how that translates. What does that mean? Turning it over to you, Ralph.
Well, I feel it was a collaboration of. Wes had written this fantastic screenplay with many wonderful roles, and Gustav seemed to be sort of pivotal in a way. A character that on the page one wondered at what pitch or what the right nuance was. I think our earliest discussions were, where does you pitch it at? Is it high, flamboyant, and very demonstrative, or is it perhaps the other way? And I think a lot of our discussions, and indeed the first few days, were feeling where you felt it. It sat best, and I was throwing out different options, I think.
Well, I remember one moment. I remember for me, a very exciting moment was Ralph's character is a hotel concierge, and he wears sort of like like a cutaway, or I don't know what you call that. It entails, the costume was being made, and our costume designer Milena Cananero, she works with a large team. There's 16 Italians surrounding Ralph with pins stuck in him, and you really did not like the way this thing was fitting. I had picked this thick fabric. It wasn't quite right. You could sort of see it, but your body language was growing darker and darker, and less and less like the character. And at a certain point, there was a lot of tugging and pulling, and finally you said, "Can we please have just one moment? Can we please all the 16 people scattered out of the room?" And you said, "I don't feel good in this." And then you said, "I want to feel like this," and you started sort of dancing around like Fred Astaire in the room. And then I thought, well, he can do it in this outfit, but he doesn't really want to. So then I said, whatever Rafe just asked for, change the thing, make it thinner, do it. I want him to feel like he wants to move like that.
But those are very valuable learning curves in costume fittings, because everyone goes and no one quite knows what it should be. And it was about 4 hours of standing with these things being pinned, heavy fabric, and I did suddenly feel this. Exactly what you described. Like he should be light on his feet.
Yeah. Yes. And to me it was fun because I felt bad that it wasn't right, and also I saw you just do it right in front of me, right there. So I felt like there it is. So it was a quite fun moment.
Tony, how did your costume feel?
It was very light, but it was very tight. I remember one of the first costume fittings. You know, I'm going in there with Milena, and they're putting the pins and everything, and I feel all right. And then Wes comes in to check it out, and he says, "Make it tighter," and walks out the room. That was the only note he had, just to make it tighter. And it was great, though. I loved wearing it. It really put me in my character.
Yes, Tony's character is called a lobby boy, and it's some kind of page of some sort or sort of bellboy. But you really did, you're a very well-mannered person anyway. But when you put on this costume and just when you put on this outfit and are yourself, it's a very kind of reassuring presence. You feel like you have someone who will, deal with whatever is going to come up in a calm.
You'll do your best to help you.
Yes.
That's what this character was. So it's what I try to do as much as I possibly could.
Before, when you were preparing for the movie, Wes, I remember you were looking at older hotel movies, right?
Yes, we ended up with a. I think you even helped us make this list. I mean, I know you helped us make this list of movies to look at, and we from a few quarters we got some very good suggestions, and we ended up with a big stack of movies that we all looked at in Germany. The early Lubitsch movies and we had Grand Hotel, and what else did we have? The Mortals. What
was that early Lubitsch movie about the two thieves?
That's
Trouble in Paradise.
What?
Trouble in Paradise.
Yeah, I love that. Trouble in Paradise.
Yeah, that's the Herbert Marshall.
Herbert Marshall, this English actor that I'd never heard of, who speaks very, 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 very fast. And I thought, who is this guy? He speaks so fast. It's amazing. And I Googled him. And he had lost a leg in the First World War, but you wouldn't know it from the film. And there were these shots. I watched the film first, and he runs up these stairs
all the way down, up and down, all the way up,
Clearly
all the way down.
It was obviously a double, but I hadn't. It was very funny. And I went back and watched the film again, and they shoot him from the waist up all the time.
And you also told me there is a scene in the film that's absolutely inspired by a scene from Torn Curtain by Alfred Hitchcock. Do you not want to talk about that?
Well, I try not to. This is one of those things where we could do. Some things are inspired, and some things are plagiarism. This is a little too close to the plagiarism, but I feel we made it our own, but that's what plagiarists do, to some degree. I mean.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because it's a film that has a lot of different layers to it, and there is a suspense layer to it, and obviously there's a comic layer to it, and then many others as well.
Yes, well, we as we were mentioning these Lubitsch movies and things in that vein, and but the Hitchcock 30s, especially the earlier Hitchcock, the 30s Hitchcock movies were definitely something. We had several of those in our stack of movies that we shared, and I think there are places where we've sort of tried to do Hitchcock-esque things other than the ones that is really a Hitchcock scene.
39 Steps, Lady Vanishes, those films.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And so for Rafe, for you and Tony, what was it? How did you work on your relationship between your characters? Because it's very special in the film, particularly the exchange after you.
I don't know. I think it was just a connection that was just made instantly. I remember the first time meeting Rafe, I was quite nervous, very nervous actually, and he turns to me in a half-finished costume with pins all over him, and he gives me this great big hug, and immediately I just felt it was, all the fear was gone. And so from then on, it just, I don't know, I think it just connected.
Well,
At least that's what I felt.
No, I remember what was really impressive about Tony is that he knew all his part inside out, like 4 or 5 weeks before we even were filming, which has really impressed me. I thought I'd better get my homework done. And then I think we used to just, whenever we were on set or waiting, we would run our lines all the time.
All the time.
So we just kept riffing the lines, didn't we?
Kept going, and then we also did the tongue twisters. You taught me that one.
A few tongue twisters, yeah.
That really, really long one that I don't even think I can do right now.
Can you give it a try?
See, I got the teacher here, so I gotta do my best. She stood upon the balustrade balcony, inimicably mimicking him, hiccuping while amicably welcoming him in.
And it's a film that actually has quite a few special effects, and so I would imagine that a lot of the world of the movie as it exists on screen was a green screen.
Not
as much as
No.
you would think.
So-
It was all really tangible and really there, which I thought was fantastic as an actor to be able to see everything and not just rely on your imagination. I thought it was great to be able to see what you're, working with.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of what we did do green screen, and but we don't. I mean, usually there are probably times when we probably should be using a green screen, and I mean, Jeremy's nodding. Jeremy's our producer who probably said we should use a green screen, and I said we don't need it. We just go against white, and we're going to decorate it with these things, and then later somebody has to cut out the hairs.
Yeah.
But at least we don't have the green screens on the set, and it feels like we're really doing it.
Yeah. Wait, I see Jeremy's laughing now, but was he laughing then when you were talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, and the snow. I mean, it's a very snowy movie, and
Yes.
it was a very snowy place where we filmed it. So that we had the luxury of real snow.
Yeah, and I get the sense and really inspired by feelings that you had driving through Eastern Europe, through Germany and Eastern Europe.
Yeah, after the script was written, we were trying to figure out how are we going to make this movie and where are we going to make it, and we traveled around to Hungary and Czech Republic and all around Germany and a little bit in Austria, and a lot of things are in the movie from that sort of research. I mean, it changed the story in a way without changing the words of the script. It gave it another layer of what the history is in the architecture of those, behind the Iron Curtain, of how the fascism, how these grand hotels are hidden under these communist era interiors and things like that. So anyway, there's sort of what had been expressed in one way in our story became more about sort of ideologies and things that are in the physical design of it, I guess.
That are expressed visually. Yeah. And in a way, what you're doing is giving a kind of a capsule version of 20th century history of Eastern Europe within the framework of this movie.
That would be good.
I don't want to.
That would be good if we did that.
That's the way it felt to me. In a funny way. Can you talk about the rest of the cast, Wes, who's not here?
Yes, we had. Let's see who we've got. Where do we? So we have Saoirse Ronan, Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton plays an 85-year-old woman. We have Jeff Goldblum,
Adrian Brody.
Harvey
Keitel, Edward Norton. We've
Jason
got
Schwartzman.
Bob
Sadu.
Balaban and a little.
Bob Balaban,
Willem Dafoe,
F. Murray Abraham,
Jude Law.
Yep. Who else we got?
Edward Norton.
Edward Norton. We said
Edward
somebody
Norton.
said yes. Bill Murray.
Murray,
Owen
yeah.
Wilson.
F. Murray Abraham.
Yeah.
Right. We've got a lot of guys on this one.
And F. Murray Abraham is your character as an older man.
Yes, he is. Which was awesome. Because he's F. Murray Abraham, you know?
And let's not forget Tom Wilkinson.
Tom
course not,
Wilkinson,
no.
we've got, yeah.
Well, we've named everybody.
Yeah,
good.
I mean, you know, there they are.
Yeah. Oh, what?
I
Oh,
kinda
Léa
had a cheat.
Seydoux and Mathieu Almaric.
Oh, Mathieu
we
Almaric
left
too.
out. We left
That's
out
right.
a couple of good ones. Léa Seydoux.
I
Oh,
said Leia. I did.
You
Léa
said
Seydoux.
Léa already.
Léa,
All right.
yeah.
All right. Okay.
And we
Let's say next
be
question,
the-
right?
we have clips. We should go to the first
A
clip.
clip.
One thing that I wanted that was just on my mind when you mentioned Tilda Swinton's name, if one didn't see her name in the cast list, you would never know that it was her, I must say. That's true of a couple of performances of hers, and in this one, it's just, she's...
Yeah, Tilda is great, and Tilda, I sort of feel like she's a wonderful actress, and also sort of a avant-garde performance artist in some way too, and I feel like that goes into part like this. I don't know. Anyway, also, you know, we try to, you know, we do these movies kind of economically. We sometimes are trying to do something kind of big on a smaller budget, but with the makeup, the old age makeup, you just gotta spend the money. That's the thing. You get the person who does, you know, who ages Meryl Streep into Margaret Thatcher.
He also did Voldemort.
Oh, really?
Oh, Voldemort.
Is that
Oh.
right?
Yeah.
As I say, the top people.
But there was some CGI there. Let's hope. With Voldemort.
Yeah, but he did a lot. He did 3 hours
Just a
of
little.
work every day.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to write off the makeup guy. No. Did it take? You mentioned, Rafe, that you were looking for the rhythm of the character and the kind of cadence that you wanted. How long did it take you to find that, to get into the groove of the character? After your costume had been fitted properly.
Well, I think we did an early reading just when Wes came to my home in London, and we read through, and I think quite quickly. I mean, you know, one of the things Wes, well, is sort of obvious, and Wes underlined it, was a sort of speed of delivery, a rhythm of delivery, which sometimes I would say to Wes, oh, it's too fast, no one can understand what I'm saying. And he said, no, go faster. But I think, I mean, a lot of what we're talking about was shared between Tony and myself. You know, it was a sort of the ping pong of repartee, and I think a lot of these movies, old movies that we've been talking about, are really helpful, because you only have to look at half an hour of one of these Billy Wilder or Ernst Lubitsch movies, comic movies from the 30s, and you see it's brilliant to watch the skill of, say, Jimmy Stewart in The Shop Around the Corner, because what they do is they have a style that you would never call naturalistic, but it has a realism to it, and that's what I think we were aspiring to.
Yeah, so there's an overall rhythm that's stylized, and yet within that there's an emotional
but I think
truth.
it was all about keeping it real. I mean, I think, you know, I mean, you want to feel you're playing a human being, but you know, I can't really explain it really, but you're not.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the only thing I would even say when you say the rhythm is style, I mean, it's really fast, but I mean, they just try to make it real, and I feel like they do. They make it seem like it's really happening.
I suppose what I'm saying is it can't be unconnected from having a relationship and feeling real things. I mean, I think our job was to sort of. There's this sort of technical requirement of what we're calling speed or pace or rhythm, whatever, but I think we still had to have a real human...
It's all generated by
Emotion.
the exchange.
Yeah, exactly.
The emotion still has to be there.
Yep. Why don't we do the next brief clip?
Okay.
There is a lot of information packed in the film, and it is a very rich experience, and a lot of emotion packed in the film. And I'm wondering, Wes, if you think about, for the viewer, the idea that of the viewer as someone who's going to go back more than once.
Well,
I mean,
wouldn't
ideally,
bank
of
on
course,
that.
but-
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah. You know what? I guess the thing is, you think, yeah, my experience is you think about the viewer as, are people going to understand what we're trying to get them to understand here? Are we keeping the tension during this? It's you think of the audience a lot, I think, when you're in the cutting room, but you definitely don't think about what they'll notice on the second viewing. You're hoping for the first.
But hoping that they'll be drawn to it so that they'll, have a richer, an increasingly richer experience in the second. Yeah, that's the jackpot, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we want to do questions from the audience.
Hello, my name is Kat. I'm a student at NYU, and I have a question for Rafe and Tony. So, first of all, I know that a lot of the dialogue in a lot of Wes Anderson films, it's very quick and very, I feel very intelligent and very sort of clever. And how did you prepare for that interaction between each other, like the quick dialogue, the sort of point blank dialogue? Sorry, I'm nervous.
We just practiced.
Yeah.
It's the way to go.
Practice.
Plus another
Yeah,
practice.
exactly.
Thank you so much for coming to this very cold New York. Thank you. By the way, thank you so much for keep making very weird, dark, strange, and colorful, funny, wonderful movies. I love it. I love it. Then you're a good-looking guy. Why you are not in the movie?
This is
Yeah.
the guy. Thank you.
No, Dave. Actually, I remember you worked with Philip Seymour Hoffman in Red Dragon. He was great actor like you. How was work with him? Because I like him. I miss him too. So that's my question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I had the privilege of working with Philip Seymour Hoffman in Red Dragon, a Hannibal Lecter film. And I remember just how profoundly engaged, involved. He was in his character all the time. He played a journalist, a tabloid journalist, who meets the sticky end at my hands. But he was brilliant. He was very, very, very. He was completely there for his acting partner. Very generous, very, 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 very concentrated, and just really professional, 100% there. Just a memory that I will now treasure.
Wes, your films are as visually striking as they are orally, from explosions to the sounds of underwater to the soundtracks that you guys pick. And my question is, can you tell us about the process that goes into each sort of film, especially this one, about how you select the music and the sort of sound to go with the visual? Because that must be a very important quality.
Yes, interesting. Thank you. Yes. So, this one we had a thought that maybe that we wanted to make our own little Eastern European country. So we made a kind of pastiche of different. Our composer is Alexandre Desplat, who's French, but we thought we would use, instead of a string section, we would have a balalaika orchestra that are those, triangular Russian, stringed instrument. And a large number of those make this sort of humming sound, very kind of beautiful, magical sound. And we used alpenhorns, those things that they blow from one mountain to another. They used to communicate that way. Does this ring a bell? This type of thing? Yeah. Yeah, and so that was, musically, it was Alexandre was using those sounds, and then sound-wise, beyond that, it's a slow process of trying to make a kind of atmosphere and feeling that's not really particularly something you plan in the beginning. The one thing I will say, we usually we don't like to loop anything. You know, I mean, it's all the way they said it. So, you know, we edit the sound, but we try to edit it with things that are just from the set. So to me, the dialogue is really wants to be kind of a documentary recording of these performances that we can edit, but try not to be put in the position of having to redo it someplace else for some technical reason.
Do you ever have to do that?
We don't usually. I mean, we don't really do it.
No, I can't.
Yeah, we avoid it pretty well.
This question is directed for Rafe. So you seem like a good guy. Don't really know you, but a lot of your body of work is being a villain. So my question is, what's more fun and more fulfilling, being a protagonist or being an antagonist?
There's a lot of fun to be had in playing villains. Fun? Is there fun? Sometimes it's a bit intense. No, often. I mean, it's a cliche, I suppose. You know, the devil has all the best tunes. Sometimes that's the case. No, I mean, I guess. All villains are different. So a part that was, you know, I mean, the SS officer in Schindler's List is a very brilliantly written role by Steven Zaillian with a lot of kind of psychological detail that was really something to get your teeth into. And so that was, and then Voldemort, everyone always brings it up. But that was not a lot of psychological detail. A lot of wand action and robe action. And I had to learn how to. I had a problem with tights underneath my robe because the gusset of the tights would always work its way down between my knees. So the thing I learned, the most valuable thing I learned was if you have a problem with a gusset in your tights, is to cut them off and make garters. And so each villain has a different challenge.
What is a gusset?
A gusset is the little square material that sits right here against your perineum.
Yeah.
If it stays there, of course. If it drops down, it's no longer against your perineum.
Hey, this is a question directed for Mr. Anderson. So I have a question of each year films seem like they start off small and then become like way bigger than life, and each year casts become bigger with each film, it seems like, too. As a writer and a director, how do you deal with that many characters within a film and actually keep track of where they're going to end up by the end of the film?
Yeah, that's a good question. This movie does have a very big cast. You know, it takes place in a few different time periods. It sort of works its way back to where the story really happens, and it's a kind of, we're accumulating a lot of characters and players as we do that, and in fact, I sort of learned this along the way. You have to be very careful about how you people kind of. I mean, we all know this watching movies. Some of you, at the end of the movie, you don't know the names of anybody, or you're sort of. Was that guy the sister? Or, I mean, was she the sister, or was she the mother, or what? The relationships they don't necessarily just reveal themselves, And with this movie, even in post-production, we did a number of little things to kind of underline who is who and what their role is. We were kind of working on clarity all the way up until the end of it. I guess the answer is you have to try really hard sometimes. Yes, it's not necessarily an automatic thing.
Hi. Over here, sorry. I know, the riots and the glare. Hi. So I have a couple questions, actually. I want to first say thank you to Wes for even making these movies. I don't know if anyone else here feels the way I do, but my sense of humor, my expectations of cinema have been pretty much defined by everything you've ever made. And I think everyone of a certain age probably in this room feels the same way. So thank you. I don't know what we'd think about movies if it wasn't for you, honestly. So I have one question for Tony. and then 2 for Wes. So first question for Tony is, how much of Wes's films did you know or appreciate before you were cast? And because I think, it's been pretty much your lifetime probably that these have been around. And then for Wes, sorry, I have to do this. So 2 questions. One is, you're moving backwards in time, it seems like a little bit. Like you originally started with ambiguous time periods. You moved to the 60s with Moonrise Kingdom, and now you're in the 30s. And I'm curious if you start as a story writer and as a creative person with the decade now, or with these 2 past movies, or if the decade, came after. And then number 2, and please forgive me for this, are we to expect a major female protagonist anytime in the near future? So those are my 2. You write such great, fascinating female characters, so had to ask. So thank you for humoring me, everyone.
So definitely I'd been a fan of Wes before any of this process got started. I had seen the Darjeeling Limited, Fantastic Mr. Fox, and the Royal Tenenbaums, and I'd loved them all, especially the Darjeeling Limited, as I have 2 brothers and I feel very attached to that movie. And it was just very exciting to be even just auditioning for, this genius. So I was very fortunate.
Thank you. And yes, and my ones, what was the first one? Time periods. The time periods thing. Well, with this movie, we wrote the beginning of the story. 6 years ago or so, we'd written just a sort of a sketch of it's scenes that are in the movie, but they were just on their own, and it was set in the present. So we actually started it thinking it was set today, and then it was this writer Stefan Zweig that I mentioned. It was when I started thinking I would like to connect it that it would be a sort of about Europe in his time, and that it might express something, that we might express some of his ideas in the movie, and that's what put it in that time frame. And but I do have a sort of feeling like I'm kind of in a mode to do sort of period picture type of things, which I don't know why. I mean, Rafe did a wonderful period picture. I mean, his film, The Invisible Woman, about Charles Dickens, is a wonderful period picture, which I responded to very strongly. I love that movie. And then
it has a female protagonist.
And it has a female protagonist. Yes. Which brings us to the other question. Yes, and I do. Yeah, this could be one of my. I do think Moonrise Kingdom. That one. Thank you. That one. I sort of feel like for me the lead character in that one was the girl in the story, but I would like to. What I would love to write a part, a good big part. I would like to have the lead character that was a woman. I mean, there's something I've thought about that I want to do to see if I can do that well. Because to different degrees. I mean, a lot of these movies are kind of this one, it's there are not very many female characters at all. Up there, there's a lot of male energy in it, and which can be good or bad, But I think it's good advice to try to change this.
Hello, all. Thank you for being here. My name's Leanne, and Wes, I had a question for you. We kind of touched on it with the pins and the thick material that you chose for the costume. Do you ever write a part or a scene for a prop or a piece of wardrobe? Does the prosthetic finger ever come before the Margot Tenenbaum?
Well, I would say not really. Usually, I think most of the characters in these things there's usually some person that it's based on, something that happened somewhere along the way that's sort of the reason to bother. So some sort of lingering emotion or memory or something like that. I feel like they start with relationships. but I love a good prop, and you know, on this we've worked with a prop master, Sandy Hamilton, on many movies who couldn't do this one. We had a new one, Robin Miller, on this, who was a wonderful collaborator. And you know, in this movie, there are all kinds of you know, there's these pastries that they have in the film, which this local baker in this town of Görlitz, we found she made us thousands and thousands of these things that are in the movie. And there was someone who made porcelain, who was a local person. And anyway, say again? The perfume bottle was made. Yes, the prop person is sort of someone who brings in craftspeople and in this case local artists, and they all became our kind of collaborators, and some of them appear in the movie, and it introduces another layer of, I mean, in a way I'm bringing it back to people, because those objects and things are usually connected to the people, and they represent the people, and they come from these people, but it was a fun part of making the movie was living in this city of Görlitz and kind of you know, occupying the place and being joined by these people. You know, we lived in this hotel together, all of us, and the guy who owned the hotel, Georg, and he was at the front desk, but he was also the front desk in the movie. You know, we had cast him in the movie, so we would see him in one outfit at the front desk, and then we would go home, and he would already be there in his other outfit, waiting at the other desk, and he would always get around us and, you know, be there. But anyway, it was nice just being a part of this community. That's the end of it.
Wes, Rafe, Tony, thank you.
Thank you
all
very
for
much.